What was supposed to be a peaceful tribute nearly took a very different turn when DMX's eldest son, Xavier, lost his composure during his father's street naming ceremony. Yonkers native DMX was recently honored by his hometown with a posthumous tribute. The corner of School Street and Brook Street was officially renamed Earl DMX Simmons Way. DMX grew up in an apartment building on School Street, and a large mural of the rapper now stands beside the street sign. DMX passed away in 2021, but his impact on Yonkers remains undeniable. Of course, not everyone agrees with the honor. Some people feel he didn't deserve a street named after him, pointing to the gangster themes in much of his music. Others argued that he was a contradiction, spending concerts talking about street life before ending them with prayer. But supporters see it differently. At least he acknowledged his faith. Plenty of artists talk recklessly all day without ever mentioning anything spiritual. As for Xavier, some people have been making harsh assumptions about him, claiming he looks troubled or comparing him to struggles associated with his father's past. Rumors have also circulated about people connected to DMX's life, but none of that changes the fact that DMX is no longer here to defend himself. Whatever mistakes he made during his lifetime, many believe he deserves to rest in peace. Still, the focus quickly shifted away from the celebration and onto family tensions. During the ceremony, Xavier interrupted the proceedings and made it clear he felt members of DMX's original family were being excluded. He thanked the city of Yonkers, Mayor Spano, and everyone who helped make the street naming possible. He acknowledged the work that went into gathering support and signatures for the tribute. But then his remarks took a different turn. Addressing DMX's fiancée, Desiree Lindstrom, he accused her of behaving dishonorably and claimed that DMX's children, his mother, and other members of the family had been excluded. He insisted that his grandparents and parents had built DMX's legacy from the ground up and said the city would always remember them. The moment became tense. People tried to calm him down, and eventually he stepped away, but it was clear emotions were running high. Things could have ended much worse than they did. When Xavier spoke about DMX's original family, it raised questions. DMX had a large family that extended across multiple relationships and included more than 15 children. Some wondered why Xavier felt compelled to make such a public statement during a ceremony meant to honor his father. Others suggested that this very behavior may have been why organizers were hesitant about giving him the microphone in the first place. If the goal was to celebrate DMX's legacy, turning the event into a family dispute only distracted from that purpose. The situation reportedly exposed tensions that had been building behind the scenes for years. Instead of focusing on the honor being given to DMX, attention shifted toward conflict within the family. Looking back at DMX's life, drama and hardship were never far away. He lived much of his life in the public eye, openly discussing his struggles, his mistakes, and the obstacles he faced. One of the most memorable examples came during an interview while he was incarcerated in Arizona. When asked how someone who had sold millions of records and earned millions of dollars ended up in jail, DMX didn't dodge the question. He spoke about arriving in Arizona and falling in love with the beauty of the state after watching a sunrise. But then he described encountering what he called the devil in God's country. He explained that he wasn't referring to any one person. Instead, he spoke about temptation, hardship, and the challenges people face throughout life. For DMX, those struggles became proof of his faith because overcoming them showed him that God was helping him persevere. When asked if he would return to Arizona after his release, he made it clear he had no interest in coming back. He joked that if a plane had to fly over the state, he would rather go around it. What made DMX different from many artists was his willingness to be honest about his flaws. He rarely denied the difficult realities of his life. That openness became one of the reasons so many people connected with his music. His fans felt they knew who he was because he never pretended to be perfect. Even after his passing, discussions about his life, his legacy, and his influence continue. His estate remains the subject of legal disputes, with multiple family members and interested parties involved. With so many children and so many complicated relationships, resolving everything has proven difficult. To understand why emotions remain so intense, It helps to remember the circumstances surrounding his death. In April 2021, DMX was rushed to White Plains Hospital after suffering a heart attack. Paramedics were able to revive him and restore a pulse before transporting him for emergency treatment. Reports initially suggested a narcotics overdose may have contributed to the incident, although the exact cause was not immediately confirmed. His attorney of more than 25 years publicly expressed concern about his condition, explaining that the situation was extremely serious. That night, DMX suffered cerebral hypoxia, a lack of oxygen reaching the brain. Despite efforts to save him, the damage was severe. His former manager later stated that he had entered a vegetative state due to lung and brain failure. A vigil was held outside the hospital as fans gathered to pray and show support. Family members asked for privacy and requested prayers during the difficult time. A few days later, DMX fell into a coma and underwent tests to determine the extent of his brain function. The results were devastating. The damage was irreversible. On April 9, 2021, 1 week after being hospitalized, family and close friends gathered around his bedside hoping for a miracle. According to those present, one of his uncles knelt beside him and pleaded for him not to leave yet. But later that evening, DMX was removed from life support. Shortly afterward, his family confirmed his passing. They described him as a warrior who fought until the very end and said he loved his family with all his heart. The news sent shockwaves through the hip-hop community. Artists, friends, and fans from around the world flooded social media with tributes and messages of support. One of the most complicated aspects of his passing was that DMX reportedly did not leave behind a will. Combined with the fact that he had 15 children and multiple relationships, the legal battle surrounding his estate became incredibly complex. On April 24th, a memorial service was held at Brooklyn's Barclays Center. Streets were closed as a monster truck carried his casket through the city. A choir performed, and several of his children delivered emotional speeches. Xavier, who was 28 years old at the time, spoke proudly about his father, calling him a king and an icon. The memorial attracted major figures from the music industry, including Jay-Z, Beyoncé, Swizz Beatz, Fabulous, and members of the Ruff Ryders. Afterward, DMX was laid to rest in Oakland Cemetery in Yonkers. Despite the controversies and speculation that have followed his passing, one thing remains clear. Fans never stopped believing that DMX was capable of finding peace. Throughout his life, he repeatedly sought treatment and worked toward sobriety. He openly acknowledged his struggles and continued fighting them. Just days before his death, he posted a video of himself dancing to a Jackson 5 song. He appeared happy and full of energy. That's one reason his passing felt so sudden to so many people. Even so, his legacy remains enormous. DMX became one of the most influential rappers of his generation. His honesty, passion, and unmistakable voice helped define hip-hop in the late 1990s and early 2000s. Very few artists have matched what he accomplished. He remains the only rapper whose first 5 studio albums debuted at #1. He was also the first living hip-hop artist to have 2 albums go platinum in the same year. Over the course of his career, he sold more than 74 million records worldwide. His debut album, It's Dark and Hell is Hot, sold over 5 million copies and immediately established him as a major force in music. He followed it with a series of influential releases, including And Then There Was X, which featured the hit single Party Up. His song, X Gon' Give It To Ya, remains one of the most recognizable tracks in hip-hop history. At the time of his death, DMX was working on a comeback album that was only 2 songs away from completion. The project featured contributions from artists including Usher, Lil Wayne, and Bono. He spoke enthusiastically about how many people wanted to be part of the album and how excited they were for its release. Although he never got to see its success, the album Exodus was released posthumously and performed well. Still, no discussion of DMX would be complete without acknowledging the contradictions that made him such a fascinating figure. He experienced tremendous success, but he also struggled with addiction and legal problems throughout much of his life. He faced charges ranging from drug possession to animal cruelty and other offenses. Rather than hide those experiences, he often incorporated them into his music. That honesty gave his work a level of authenticity that resonated with millions of listeners. Today, his influence can still be heard in a new generation of artists inspired by his raw emotion and fearless vulnerability. And while his career was filled with triumphs and setbacks, many people remember him for his determination to keep fighting, no matter how difficult life became. Rest in peace, DMX. For many fans, there has never been another rapper quite like him. His voice, his energy, and his presence were unique. Whether people agreed with every decision he made or not, his impact on hip-hop is impossible to deny. And that's why, years after his passing, people are still talking about him today.